Picture this. Somewhere in the deep past, you could have walked across a valley and looked at another kind of human staring right back at you. Not a different tribe, not a different skin color, a completely different species of human. A separate branch of the family tree that had been evolving on its own for hundreds of thousands of years. And here's the wild part. There wasn't just one other kind. Scientists think that at one point, maybe 5 or 6 different human species were all alive at the same time. There were us, Homo sapiens. There were the Neanderthals, the Denisovans, the tiny hobbit humans on an island in Indonesia, and probably a few more we haven't even dug up yet. Now, there's just one left, us. We're all alone on a planet that used to be way more crowded with people who thought, made tools, lit fires, buried their loved ones, and even made art. So what happened to everybody else? Did we do it? That's one of the most debated and honestly kind of uncomfortable questions in all of science. And the real answer is messier than you'd expect. Before we dig in, do me a quick favor. If you're into this kind of stuff, hit that like button and subscribe. It's a new channel, and honestly, it helps more than you know. Okay, let's get into it. Let's start with the big, scary version of the story, because it's the one everybody jumps to. Did modern humans wipe out the Neanderthals? And I mean wipe out, because if the answer is yes, that says something pretty heavy about who we are as a species. It'd mean that from the very beginning, we were the kind of creature that shows up and everybody else disappears. So let's actually look at the evidence. First, forget everything cartoons taught you about Neanderthals. These weren't dumb cavemen dragging clubs around. Their brains were as big as ours, sometimes bigger. They built genuinely clever tools that took real planning to make. They took care of their sick and their elderly. We found Neanderthal skeletons with old injuries that healed, which means somebody had to feed them and protect them for weeks, maybe months, while they recovered. They buried their dead. Some may have even decorated themselves. These were people, full stop. And then, about 40,000 years ago, right after modern humans showed up in Europe in big numbers, they were gone. And look, the timing is suspicious. We move into a region, and soon after, the Neanderthals in that region vanish, over and over, in place after place. It's exactly the pattern you'd expect if we were the cause. But suspicious timing isn't proof. So let's break down what could have actually done it. Option 1, straight up violence. We met them, we fought them, we won. A slow genocide spread out over thousands of years. Here's the thing though. The evidence for that is pretty thin. Sure, we found some Neanderthal bones with signs of trauma, but it's really hard to tell if that damage came from us, from other Neanderthals, from an accident, or just from being buried in the ground for 40,000 years. There's no clear smoking gun, no mass grave that screams, "Battle happened here." That doesn't mean it never happened. It just means we can't prove it either way. But here's where the story takes a turn that most people never hear about. The Neanderthals, they're not totally gone. They're inside you, right now. If your family comes from anywhere outside of Africa, somewhere between 1 and 4% of your DNA is Neanderthal. That's not a tiny random glitch. That's real, measurable Neanderthal genetics passed down through thousands of generations, all the way into your body today. And you know what that means, right? It means modern humans and Neanderthals had kids together. Real kids who grew up, had their own kids, and passed those genes forward. Now think about that for a second. You don't have babies with people you're at total war with. So whatever was going on between us and them, it wasn't all fighting. There were moments of closeness too. Sometimes friendly, sometimes maybe not. It clearly changed depending on the time, the place, and the people involved. So it wasn't one clean invasion. It was thousands of years of messy, complicated contact. Okay, so if it wasn't just violence, what else could have killed them off? Because there are actually a few suspects here. Let's talk about disease. And honestly, this might be the biggest one, even though nobody talks about it. When modern humans walked out of Africa, we carried germs with us. Germs our bodies had spent thousands of years learning to survive. But the Neanderthals? They'd never been exposed to that stuff. No immunity at all. You've probably heard what happened when explorers reached the Americas and accidentally brought diseases that wiped out huge populations who'd never encountered them. Same brutal idea. A modern human didn't need a weapon to be deadly. Just breathing the same air could have done it. And here's the eerie part. Disease leaves almost no trace in the fossil record. A Neanderthal who died of some new infection looks exactly like one who died of old age. Then there's climate. Right around the time Neanderthals were disappearing, Europe's weather was going haywire. Cold, unstable, harsh. Their population was probably already shrinking and stressed before we ever showed up in big numbers. And a species that's already struggling? It's way more fragile when new competition arrives. Which brings us to the last suspect, competition. And this one's sneaky, because it doesn't require anybody to want to hurt anybody. See, we and the Neanderthals wanted the same things. The same animals to hunt, the same caves to sleep in, the same resources in the same land. And it looks like we just had a few small edges. Our social networks were bigger. We traded stuff like shells and pigments across huge distances, which means we had connections and information reaching way farther than theirs did. That's a survival advantage. If food ran out in one spot, we had distant friends to lean on. We also had better hunting tech, spear throwers, and eventually bows and arrows. That let us take down animals from a safe distance, while Neanderthals were built for risky, up-close hunting. Put it all together, and we could just feed ourselves a little more reliably, generation after generation. And over thousands of years, a little better adds up to everything. We didn't have to kill them. We just had to outlast them at the dinner table. Slowly, their numbers shrank until there weren't enough of them left to keep going. Now let's talk about the Denisovans. And these guys are a total mystery. We didn't find them from a skeleton. We found them from a finger bone and a tooth in a cave in Siberia. That's it. When scientists pulled DNA out of those little fragments, they realized they'd discovered a completely unknown kind of human. Everything we know about the Denisovans basically comes from their DNA. And just like the Neanderthals, they live on inside people today. Denisovan DNA shows up across Asia and the Pacific, with the highest amounts in places like Aboriginal Australians and Papua New Guineans. Here's the coolest part. Some of that leftover Denisovan DNA is actually useful. There's a gene that helps people in Tibet survive way up in the thin mountain air, and it came straight from the Denisovans. So every time someone hikes those high peaks without gasping for breath, they're kind of running on ancient Denisovan biology. Pretty amazing when you think about it. Oh, and the Denisovans and Neanderthals? They had kids together too. This whole thing wasn't a neat little family tree. It was a tangled web of different humans meeting, mixing, and blending across hundreds of thousands of years. There's one more I want to mention. The hobbits. A tiny human species that lived on an island called Flores in Indonesia until about 50,000 years ago. And guess what? That's right about when modern humans reached the area. Same suspicious timing all over again. But islands are different. Smaller populations, more isolated, way more fragile. Whatever happened there might have happened fast. Maybe it was us. Maybe it was a volcanic eruption. Maybe both. Honestly, we just don't know for sure. But that pattern, us showing up right before another human species vanishes, keeps repeating too many times to be a coincidence. So let's finally answer the big question. Did we kill the other humans? The most honest answer is probably yes. In some ways, in some places, at some times. But not the way you'd think. Not some organized, deliberate extermination. It was messier than that. We brought diseases they couldn't survive. We outcompeted them for food. We had kids with them. And yeah, sometimes we probably fought them. And across thousands of years, all of it added up to the same ending everywhere. They vanished, we stayed. And here's what gets me. There's a comforting version of this story where it was all just natural competition, nobody's fault. And there's a darker version where our species was the thing that showed up and quietly erased everyone else like us. Beings who made tools, cared for their sick, buried their dead, and maybe looked up at the same stars and wondered the same things we wonder. The truth is somewhere in the messy middle. For most of the last 500,000 years, being human meant lots of different things. Different kinds of minds, different ways of living, and that is gone. Except for one tiny piece. We carry them in our DNA. That little 1 to 4%. It's the only monument they've got. The other humans are gone. We're still here. And the connection between those two facts might just be the most uncomfortable question in our entire story. Thanks for watching. If you made it this far, you're my kind of person. Hit subscribe and I'll see you in the next one.